This just revealed so much about the Minnesota Wild's future, and especially this offseason, as at the end of season press conference, Bill Guerin revealed a lot about Kirill Kaprizov's extension status, which has us fired up, but also very much hinted at a certain star winger coming to Minnesota. We got to talk about all of that, plus a big update on Brett McLean and the Iowa Wild situation, and a final little great note on Marc Andre Fleury. Yes, we can't stop talking about him. We're going to talk about all of that on this episode of Wild Digest, but guys, before we get into the video, just want to remind you, 90% of you are still not subscribed. You're subscribing like crazy. We're only 300 subscribers away from 1,000. And if you're enjoying this daily Minnesota Wild content, hit the free button down below. We're here all off season long. We'd love to hit 1,000 soon. Thank you for being here. Mark, let's start with a nice little light note on Marc Andre Fleury. One of these things that he said today, Guerin said he will have a spot in the organization waiting for Fleury. And I just love to hear this, right? Of course, Fleury retires. He gets into the playoffs, breaking the record for most ever playoffs appeared in. He finishes the season. He's going to the World Hockey Championship. He's over there right now with Team Canada, gets to play with his old friend Sidney Crosby. And now we hear this kind of news. Like, we figured that there would be something waiting for him here, but just to hear Guerin say this it's so heartwarming. Honestly, anything to do with Fleury, I absolutely love.
I mean, listen, if Fleury wants to come in as the E-Bug, this would be the best emergency backup goaltender in history of the NHL. One of the best goalies ever taking on that role. But I think Marc Andre Fleury sticking around with the organization shows the importance of his leadership with this group, being around the guys. I think it brings the spirits up and honestly helps out the team. If he wants to help develop some of the goaltenders, help out through that as well, I think there's a lot of value of keeping him around.
You know what? I would just love for him to be around in any capacity if he does decide to do it, And hey, can you imagine Marc Andre Fleury helping out a young Jesper Wallstedt after a rough year in the AHL? Fleury's had some tough times in his career as well, especially, missing out on some Stanley Cup final games and stuff. He's had to bounce back from tough things, had teams do some pretty tough things to him, as we know. And, Jesper Wallstedt, young guy, be really cool to see them work together. But leave some love again for Fleury down below. It's just always nice to see this. But speaking of Wallstedt, Mark, I want to transition quickly to Iowa. And, I shared my thoughts. And, we know Michael Russo and Joe Smith, they shared their thoughts on Iowa. It's a place that could afford to be a little bit better. And there were a lot of questions around management and coaching, stuff like that. Overall, we thought Brett McLean was doing a decent job, even though Iowa was not so hot in the standings, one of only 7 teams to miss the playoffs in the AHL. But Bill Guerin said Brett McLean is safe. No staff changes in Minnesota. And honestly, I kind of don't mind this. Let the guys grow together. I mean, Iowa has a bad reputation, but with a certain amount of solid players down there again, Liam Ogren was so great last year for them. I mean, you hope he makes the Wild this upcoming season. I imagine he will. You got Hunter Height. You do have a guy like David Jiricek, who, again, if he doesn't crack the Wild roster, going to spend a lot of time down there. Wallstedt will likely be up next year, but I like the idea of just keeping some consistency around because, a carousel of coaches as well is, I'm not saying that that's what this is or would turn into, but you never really want to have a bunch of young guys go through a ton of coaches. So I kind of don't mind it. What are your thoughts on this? Any pressing thoughts on that? I think running it back for another year is probably the right move.
Yeah, you said it best. I think you give it at least one more year. If they turn it around perfect, you still have this guy in-house growing relationships with the players in Iowa. If it doesn't work out, fire him next year. You can work with that at the end of the year. But at the moment, I like what you say. Let these guys grow together. The coaching staff's already been with this team. They know the ins and out. Yes, you could write this off as a bad year, but there could be a great year in the future. They could turn things around. I don't think you need to drastically change the coaching staff, unless maybe they start the season 0-10 or something like that, then take a look. But right now, I'm completely fine with this, honestly, and I don't think it's too pressing to make a change.
Yeah, but I know there's some people, looking at the comments in the last video, some people are very pro Iowa, just kind of let's see how it, we had a pretty rough year. It wasn't the best. There wasn't a ton of consistency, but there's also a large contingent of people, and honestly, at times this season, I was feeling it too, man, Iowa, look, they just have never developed the guys that they were supposed to develop, and I just feel like, how many changes can you make before something changes down there? Anyway, let us know. I'm sure a lot of you have some pretty polarizing thoughts on the Iowa Wild, but look, Mark, let's get into the big stuff right now, and I want to start from this big quote from Bill Guerin here. The first thing he basically said is, well, I don't want to sign any stupid contracts or anything like that. I want to make this team better than it is today. And that is the big thing, and he went out and said, look, it's just oh God, we don't have to hear about it anymore, talking about getting the money back from these buyouts. And honestly, I feel you, Bill. But, this offseason is going to be, look, it's not make or break for Guerin, But a lot of fans, they're not super happy with Bill Guerin, myself included. I think he's in for a big offseason. Some of the signings have definitely not been great. But the big thing here is that Guerin said they're in the market for centers this offseason, but wouldn't be opposed to a scoring winger. Defense is set, so don't worry about the defense. And Mark, when I read this, is there one name that pops into your mind when you read this?
I mean, looking at it, Brock Besser's a name that pops in immediately. Bringing him would be awesome, or just extending Kaprizov. Bill needs to have a big offseason. He knows not maybe his job's on the line at the current moment, but if the Wild lose, just say in the first round again next year, there could be a big change coming.
Yeah, you never know, right? And that's why he said, like, looking at this roster, this Wild roster, the forwards, we got a lot of good talent. Again, we go through this in pretty much every video. Kaprizov, we'll get into that in just a second as well. But like, look, Zuccarello's aging. He wants to stick around as long as he can around Kaprizov. Boldy is incredible. Eriksson Ek hopefully will have a big bounce back year next year after getting fully healthy. And there's some good talent here, but you still need that scoring depth that just wasn't really present in the playoffs. You were hoping Rossi could do that. Again, he's another story. We've talked about him in a couple other videos. But when he says, look, we're in the market for centers, maybe a scoring winger, there's a certain guys that have been linked to the Wild constantly. Brock Besser is one of them. And again, Minnesota guy, there's, someone in the comments, I'm not going to say the name, they didn't want to, but, they said, oh, maybe Besser was golfing with Bill Guerin. You never really know. That's a possibility. But Besser just makes a lot of sense in terms of scoring winger. And if you're talking about centers, there's a lot of them out there, but Brock Nelson has been a big name linked to Minnesota as well. Now, that'd be a very Bill Guerin move. He's 6'4", and he's a veteran. He brings some grit, but he's also a great scorer. He can be a guy who gets you 30 goals. Problem is, signing a near 34-year-old to a long-term contract is tough. But looking towards the future looks pretty bright right now, so leave your thoughts on what Bill Guerin said there. But the final thing for this video, Mark, is the Kirill Kaprizov stuff. Have to talk about this. He reiterates he's very confident they'll extend Kaprizov this summer. Look, Kirill Kaprizov, fan favorite, my personal favorite player in the entire NHL. I'm sure a lot of your guys too. Just the heart and soul of this team, the best player for the Minnesota Wild ever. And if he sticks around, he will go down as the greatest. If he's not already, honestly, he is unbelievable. Mark, I love how confident they're talking about here. I know the number of between 15 and 16 million a season was thrown out. It's a big number to swallow, but honestly, for Kirill Kaprizov, I think every single penny would be worth it.
I think at this point, Bill Guerin walks into the office with Kaprizov, put down a blank check, lay a pen next to him, say, what do you want? What's it going to take for you to be a Minnesota Wild for life? This is a franchise player, generational talent, someone the Wild cannot lose. If you lose him, fire Bill Guerin immediately. They're not going to. But Kaprizov has to stay, and I think that's by far the number one priority. Obviously, that's what's going without saying, but I do think they're going to get this done, getting him locked up long term. This is the type of player, obviously, you build your team around, and you do everything. Like I said, 15, 16, whatever you want to give him the money to keep him on this team.
Yep, you have to. He got 56 points in 41 games. I think he finished third on the team in scoring despite only playing half of the games. I believe it was just Rossi and Boldy ahead of him. And so, that is honestly insane. And look, Kaprizov, he is the heart and soul of this team, like I said. If he goes for whatever reason, it's tough to come back from that. But again, hearing the fact that they're confident it'll happen this summer with still another year left on Kaprizov's deal makes me really excited. Kaprizov said he loves Minnesota. Zuccarello was talking like, hey, I want to stick around as long as Kirill's here. All the signs seem to point to this, so very, very happy about it. Let us know your thoughts on this end-of-season presser. There's some other stuff that we didn't even get into today. Maybe you saw some other things you want to talk about. We'll probably talk about it in a future video, but leave all your thoughts down below. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Wild Digest, and hey, don't forget to hit that free subscribe button on your way out. We're pushing for 1,000. Be crazy if we hit there, and you guys have been supporting us so much. Want to thank you once again. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Mark Pye. We'll catch you in the next one.